Today's podcast of The Tub is sponsored by Eitner Education. Eitner Education is committed to providing meaningful, effective, affordable professional development specifically tailored to district-level administrators and superintendents. Don't be the butt of all jokes. Stay relevant. Visit www.eitner.education.com. Hello and welcome to The Tub, a monthly podcast for all those in education to relax, get wet, and let some new thoughts soak in. I'm your host, Superintendent of Schools, Jay Eitner. Now, before you think to yourself, here we go with another know-it-all, crusty superintendent, I don't think I'm too crusty, and my knowledge, I'm not that bad. I definitely don't know it all, and I'm not going to try to pretend that I do, but I was silly to take on the superintendency when I was 33. And well, I went blazing in to change the world, just like every other education position I've taken. While I have changed the world in certain capacities, it surely hasn't been a bed of roses. Hence, my reason for creating this monthly podcast. My goal is to connect all educators in the land that share the same passions and crazy thoughts as I do. And for all those music makers and dreamers of dreams, that you are indeed not alone. Each month, we will be focusing on one new book or one topic that is trending, one Twitter chat that you should lurk or partake in, and we'll close out with one type of takeaway that you could easily turnkey in your position, whatever that may be. And again, we're welcoming parents, teachers, superintendents, custodians, and everybody in between. Be warned, I'm a Jersey boy, and I'm actually from the North State of Jersey, so if you haven't heard, there's actually two parts of New Jersey. There's the state of North Jersey and the state of South Jersey. You'll hear a little bit more about that later on. But I'm blunt, I'm brash, and if you haven't figured it out yet, I like to relax and have a good time living life. So if that's too much for you to digest, delete this now and find something on NPR. With all that being said, I'd like to take you to my first interview with the best-selling authors Rick Jetter and Rebecca Coda, who wrote Escaping the School Leader's Dunk Tank, which is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and classy bookstores everywhere. My guests today are the co-authors of the book, Escaping the School Leader's Dunk Tank. Please welcome Rebecca Coda and Rick Jetter.
Hey, Jay. How you doing, man? Thanks for having us.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thanks.
I am doing fantastic. And again, I can't thank you so much for being on my introductory podcast. And this whole podcast, one of the reasons I wanted to start doing this podcast is to lend an ear and also lend a hand. And when I read your book, I cannot tell you the shivers that came down my back and the hair that raised on my arm, because it's so real that, so many people are unfortunately living this and going through it each and every day. And I commend both of you for having the courage to come in and put together not only a series of stories of other people who've been in the dunk tank, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but your bravery in stepping up and saying, hey, I've lived this and I've done this. But most importantly, the fact that it's going to be okay and you're going to get through it and we're going to proceed. So that all being said, I'd really like for you to kind of give me a background. Talk about your educational experiences. How'd you get into education?
Yep. Ladies first. Go ahead, Rebecca.
All right. Well, I was that girl that played dolls in school every day. So just stereotypically, I just kind of knew what I was going to do. So from the time I was born till I graduated from college, I just knew I was going into education, and that was kind of my path. So I didn't ever really consider anything else. And so from there, I jumped in at Florida, and I taught fourth grade a couple of years. I moved out to Phoenix, and I taught 9 years out here, sixth and seventh grade. And then, you start inching up the ladder, and I moved into instructional coaching. And then I moved over to another district, and I moved up to the district level. as an ELA curriculum specialist and technology specialist. And now I've landed in a new spot, and I'm a STEM coach, and definitely loving it. So
awesome. Dr. Jetter?
Yeah, man, my story's a little different. I was going to actually be a professional musician to play percussion for all of my life. And I had this English teacher in 11th grade. She was really awesome. And I thought, you know what, I want to be like her. She was really cool. So I ditched my music career and went to be an English teacher in the same district that I attended school as a kid, Kenton School District. Promote right. People come along, they tap you on the shoulder. We want you to be an assistant principal. Okay, I'll do it. Okay, tapped on the shoulder again. You know, leadership skills. We want you to be an interim principal. Okay, I'll try that. That sounds cool. Left the district, went to be a principal in a neighboring district in an elementary school. Not even my background. I was secondary English. And then from there, I went to be an assistant superintendent in another neighboring district. And then I watched my superintendent, who was my boss in this school district, get dunked right before my eyes.
Wow.
Just right in front of me. A special board meeting, gone. Just dunked when the new board came aboard. And everybody looked to me, right? You're the assistant superintendent, Rick. Come on, we gotta have better times here. This is crazy. You gotta bail us out. Let's get on better footing. Dude, this is a whole other story, a whole other podcast. I can't even tell you my story. It was so messed up that I got messed up and I crashed and burned.
Wow.
It was you name the issue, it was an issue. And I was down and out for a while. And I thought, you know what? This is about resilience. We've got to build ourselves back up. Rebecca and I, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, but Rebecca and I meet up, which is a really cool story. And we write this book to help people go through the garbage that they're going through right now. And, that's why I think we're here. We're here to tell our story about the book. But that's just a little bit about my crazy background. Things were going great in my career until I met up with some people who had reasons why they didn't want me to do well. And it was slam dunk. And I've rebuilt myself and I'm back. I'm happy, I'm stress-free, and I'm back.
That's awesome. And that says it right there. The fact that, you've walked the walk, you've witnessed a dunking right in front of you. And we're going to talk about, again, the dunk itself and what the dunk is, but the fact that not only have you experienced seeing somebody go down in a bed of flames, if you will, you stepped up and then you watched the whole thing happen to you.
Yeah,
right over.
And listen, I was part of the problem because I just couldn't handle it. It was way too much.
Right,
way too much.
Right.
So I'm going to take I'll take ownership for my piece, but the dunk tank is complex.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And for those that are listening that don't know my background, just very quickly, I actually started off as a cop, and I had to make a decision on whether to be a cop or teach. And as a cop, I was injured, and then I went back into the classroom. And thankfully, going into the classroom, kind of took the same way that you did, Rick. I started out kind of doing a myriad of different things. I started in a parochial school, had everything from kindergarten all the way up to social studies in 6th grade. The Catholic school, they have no problem utilizing your time and talent during the day.
Yeah.
So I got to really check out everything and anything, and eventually became 8th grade full-time in East Brunswick, New Jersey, in one of the best school districts in the state. Spent a lot of time there, made a boatload of friends, taught some of the most amazing kids on the planet, and just loved my job. And every single day, I loved it. And then I came across, a boss who was definitely subpar at best. And, in these big districts, there's lots of different layers of dunk tanks. There's dunk tanks on different levels. And he was kind of the inspiration for me to go into administration because, you know, he was so useless and he was so ineffective as a leader. I said to myself, I said, you know what, I'm going to become a school leader and show everybody that there are good leaders in this crop. There will be good people. So that's what I did. And eventually, you know, the great state of New Jersey, there's 591 different school districts, and some of us kind of hop around a bit. So I answered the call. I became a middle school assistant principal. Loved it. Anybody who teaches middle school, we're not playing with a full deck. Don't be fooled. So we're all crazy, which is why I loved middle school, because you got to laugh at stupid jokes every day, and the stuff that happens in hallways with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, you can't even make up if you tried it right now.
That's right.
Eventually became a K-12 social studies supervisor, and that was right down the street from where I was living at the time. And then I really answered that call. You know, you said tap on your shoulder, Rick. I got tapped on the shoulder, and they said, "Did you ever think about becoming a superintendent?" I was like, "What? Get out of here. I'm 33 years old. There's no way I could be a superintendent." And after a series of laws that the governor passed, it became very easy to become a superintendent. So I did. And I was hired for change, and change I delivered in almost every facet of the way. Some people don't like to upset the apple cart. I took that apple cart, flipped it over, and kicked it down the road. And in doing so, it agitated some people. And I totally understand that. But, you know, I was there for the kids, and that's what counts. And then all of a sudden, these 2 girls came into my life, my daughters, who just turned 2 this week. The best thing that ever happened to me. So I had to make a really hard life decision and take a job much closer. And I've been, you know, a superintendent of schools now. This is my 4th year. I've definitely, if not kept the seat in the dunk tank rather warm, I've definitely been dunked, shellacked, walloped, and every other word that you could think of that's in your vocabulary. So again, I can't speak enough about your book and how beneficial it is, because there are so many people out there that are constantly either getting dunked, have gotten dunked, or are about to get dunked, and you feel so alone. You know, administrators, we feel often alone to begin with because we're pretty much on our own island for a good part of the day. But when you experience something like this, it's something that I wish nobody would experience, but it happens, and it's a part of life, and you really do some soul searching. And if you could, can you talk to me? You know, there's so many great chapters in this book, but there are some chapters that talk about soul searching, and it starts talking about, you know, health and wellness. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's part of just like knowing when to retreat, which when you're in the dunk tank, it's kind of hard to know that. So for us, it's kind of in retrospect now, you know, we can see the signs and we know that we have to build it in, but when you're in it, it's just like this spiral out of control. So yeah, and it actually leads into how we met, because Rick was working on a book that really focuses on mindfulness and just learning how to disconnect, unplug, kind of deconstruct the situation, depersonalize it, kind of remove yourself and just retreat for a bit. Just, you know, step away, clear your head. But that depersonalization piece is huge, because otherwise you start getting this paranoia of like, what did I do wrong? What's going to happen next? And you have to get away from that just to be mentally healthy. So even the physical health will help with that too.
Yeah, you know, we wrote a chapter in the dunk tank about, well, 2 primarily, about, okay, can you see yourself working 15-hour days, 16-hour days, 17? I was working 19.
Right.
And that's before I would get home and have texts and emails from everybody. And then, right, there's this black curtain over education. Nobody talks about it. Then there's anxiety, right? You know how your heart feels when you might have a board meeting that could go sour, and your heart's thumping before you even get in there. You're thinking, what is going to happen? You know, I mean, there are board meetings people talk about where there are police officers there, and I mean, that's not a secret. These things happen, right? So how do you keep yourself healthy?
Right.
Well, a lot of people take anxiety medication. A lot of people take medication for depression. A lot of people hit the bottle. Right? So we try to focus on everything, right? And even the stuff no one wants to talk about.
Yeah.
Right? People don't want to pick up a book or admit or look at themselves or look at these things happening, right? We want to just think, okay, schools are with kids. Kids are great, right? No, that's part of it. That's why we go there. That's why we love it. But there's all this craziness going on, and we uncover it. And Dave Burgess published it because he wanted to uncover it too.
Yeah, kudos to Dave, by the way, because if anyone's going to expose, it's going to be Dave. I mean, and if anyone's not familiar with Dave's line of books, the New York Times bestselling Teach Like a Pirate, followed by 18 different versions of Like a Pirate, Learn Like a Pirate, Play Like a Pirate, Study Like a Pirate. If that one's not done yet, Dave, I'll do that one for you. But, and that being said, there's books by the Kouros family. There's books talking about school leadership and the dunk tank. There's going to be books talking about professional development. I mean, his series really covers everything and anything. And this is, like you said, I mean, a lot of people, we're in education for a reason, and we all definitely have a calling. But a lot of people just turn the other way when they hear about these dark moments. And the truth is, there should be classes on this stuff for people coming into administration so they know that, this could happen. It's not guaranteed. It's not something that everyone's going to be subjected to. And hopefully in your career you won't. But don't be fooled. It's definitely there. I mean, one of my big points that I talk to prospective administrators about, is my rule number one is that if you're in this job to make people happy and to get smiles from everybody, you're in the long run of work. I mean, if you want to do that, you stay in a classroom and you work with your students every day. But this is a job where you're not going to make everyone happy, and it requires thick skin. And if you have a problem with not making anyone happy, or if you don't have thick skin, get out, because it's going to hurt you, it's going to hurt your school, and it's going to hurt everyone around you.
Yep.
And I think you circle about that too. So just going back real quick here, one of the things, I know you both live on two different parts of the country, and you touched on this, Rebecca. Dr. Cheddar was writing a book on mindfulness, you said?
Yeah, actually I have it right here. It's Sutures of the Mind. So you can see we got anxiety, sadness, misfortune, fear, jealousy, anger, disaster. So you can imagine if somebody was in the dunk tank and they saw this cover fly across social media, that one's pretty enticing as well. And I knew Dr. Jenner was an educational leader, so I went ahead and ordered it. I'm like, oh, man, this is going to be a good one. I need this right now. That whole serendipity, perfect timing. And so I read it, and I got it in my inbox, and it was a spiritual book. And it's really geared towards spiritually, centering yourself through all these mindfulness activities. And it just was perfect timing for me because I was living all of those feelings. And so I just reached out to him and I messaged him on LinkedIn. I'm like, you know what? This came at the perfect time. Thanks for writing the book. I really appreciate it. And several days later, dunk tank cover, just, like a prototype came across. And I was like, I think I commented on it. I'm like, wow, just let me know when that one releases. I'm ready for it.
Right.
And so we started some dialogue back and forth because it was really just kind of a conceptual idea at that point, and kind of started trading war stories. And I just thanked him again. And probably 3 weeks later, I get up one morning, I roll over and I check my inbox, and it was Rick. And he just had the question. He's like, hey, do you want to co-author this with me? You want to just do this? And I was like, I think I do, But then we went back and forth. I'm like, are you sure? I gave him outs like multiple times because he here he is, a book consultant, a superintendent, and, I'm a STEM coach, so, but the interesting thing is after, we kind of connected through all this, we kind of just ran the gamut of all the stories, from that first position crossing out of the classroom, all the way up to his experiences with the school board.
Yeah. Well, you definitely did run the whole gamut. And that was so appreciated because it really is a gamut. I mean, there's no other word to really describe the experience of a school administrator is you are going to run the gamut in every single facet possibly.
I really like that what you said earlier that, you coach your leaders coming in. Hey, if you got to ruffle some feathers, and I'll tell you what, nobody coached me. I came in little Miss Rosie Twinkle Sunshine into the district office, ready to color code everything. And that's kind of not what happens there.
Yeah. And that's one of those things of the school of hard knocks, right? You come in there thinking you're going to just, make everybody happy and please the world. And in fact, you were hired because you have, a checklist to fulfill, but you also have some major changes to make. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that your predecessor didn't do anything right. I mean, that may not be the case. It's just, the board may be looking for a different direction, or your boss may be looking for a different direction. Right. It's no, it doesn't automatically have to be, oh, well, the guy before me or the girl before me did blah, blah, blah. It's nothing to do with that. It's this is what it is now, and this is how we have to go about doing it. So, again, people don't really think about that other side of the dunk tank, and people don't necessarily think about why one goes into a school and automatically just assumes that everything's going to be perfect from day one. There's too many stories of aspiring administrators, even current administrators say, oh yeah, everything's fine here. There's no problem. Really? There's nothing at all. Nothing at all is wrong in your school. Nothing at all is wrong. I haven't come across any school that is 100% perfect anywhere. And if they're saying that, they're lying to your face.
Absolutely. Rick and I had heard from a professor at one of the universities, and he says, you know what? I think every person going through a leadership course should read this before they go into administration. But then there was that it might scare them off. But then I'm like, but if I knew, I would have been successful. It would have just set me up for success, and I wouldn't have experienced the heartache that I did.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I talk about a lot is you don't know what you don't know. So if you go in there and you're throwing all these new ideas and technology and all these different concepts around, and people are looking at you, I call them Krispy Kreme eyes, because they're just glazed over with this, like, what? What's going on? What's happening? Well, if you don't know about it, then you don't know about it. But here we are, and here's what we're doing. I used to swear by a book. It was written by John Fenwick called What They Don't Teach You in School Administration. And it was just loaded with all these types of scenarios. And I remember reading it for when I was going in, but everybody kind of just pushed it to the side. Be like, oh, that can't happen. That can't happen. Like, yes, it can. and it does all the time. So I don't think this is a book that should be scaring everybody. It's definitely a book that just kind of gets you ready that anything could happen. Anything could happen.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point. When we wrote it, right, we wanted it to be this this type of shot that you give somebody to protect them against pneumonia, right, or polio, or it's this booster to help them have a shield of knowledge, right?
Right.
Because, and by the way, when Rebecca was talking about that professor who was like, well, we don't want to scare away potential school leaders that we're trying to train, out of the field. That transcript is on our website. So if you want to go and read it, it is really cool to get the inside of an educational leadership professor as to why they don't go over adversarial conditions within their coursework, that it's not formalized, right? I mean, they might talk about it a little bit. They might have a little case study, but there's no formal instruction And that's what's lacking, right? These booster shots for polio, and then there's victims. So it's like, listen, wake up. It's a book. It's $26. We're not getting rich over it. Right. But your clientele at the college is going to be rich by what they walk away with. Right. That's why we're doing this.
Yeah, and that's such a, it's almost like public service. And again, I can't really thank you guys enough for putting together not just, your personal war stories, but people from all over the country. I mean, I remember reading, there's a section in your book talking about a former superintendent who eventually, was in the tank and became cutting cold cuts and working at a deli counter.
Actually, my favorite story.
Yeah, and how, to go from a superintendent and then who gets dunked and gets almost essentially blacklisted, and then finds himself taking cutting turkey, ham, and cheese. Yeah, and that's that could happen. It's like none of your stuff in this book is fictional at all. No. So. And again, just so many good lessons. But if I could just take one circle back real quick, I wanted to also commend you on the whole piece of mindfulness. The part about mindfulness, it's so essential. I got to go to China last year, and one of the things I got to see in a tour with other superintendents is how most school days in public and charter/international schools are started. And one of the things that are started in the morning is they actually start with 10 minutes of mindfulness every morning. Just some of it's just stretching. Some of it, I saw some yoga. I saw Tai Chi. But even in the middle schools, as soon as the day starts, everybody goes outside. It's not marching, but it was certainly synchronized movement around. But it was group exercises. It was stretching. It was deep breaths. It was physically moving your body, and actually, everything from cracking your neck all the way down to, just simple stretches. And how beneficial to go in and then having that. And I'm so proud to have, one of the things I started this year as a superintendent of schools is every morning, every kid gets 10 minutes with their teacher to do whatever they got to do, whether it's, like a simple brain break in the morning, or it's just a full-on stretch before we start the day. That's such an important part for kids, for teachers, for administrators, for all of us. Yeah, is to get that mindfulness in. So cool. How long did this book take to write?
Ooh, you're never going to believe it. From start to finish, it was about 7 weeks. We were pretty much machines day in and day out.
Wow.
But
Yeah. We were, it was like pedal to the metal, Jay, right? So you've got two authors, back and forth, chapter by chapter. Rebecca writes one, I work on it. I write one, she works on it. And that exchange was super, super quick. The time really was devoted to getting the stories for the book, right? So that's really where most of the front work happened. But once we put it together, right, Rebecca, you're right. It was like 7-8 weeks.
It was crazy.
I was going to ask about that. So how did you get all these stories? How did you come across, was it like sending out a tweet saying, hey, did you have your life almost ruined by a school board? Would you like to share your story? How does one even get something like this? Let alone get it, get somebody to be brave enough to commit it in book form.
It was actually easier than you think, because I've been working on narrative theory for the better part of my academic career. That's my model, right? I love narrative theory. I believe it's the best research out there, getting people's stories. So with other books that I wrote, I already had a Google Doc, a survey go out, and I actually gathered a lot of stories over the years, getting up to me and Rebecca, that were school leader stories that were dunk tank situations. So we've been collecting these things even before we met. And then what we did was, it was like the telephone game. This person, they know somebody who got dunked. That person, they know somebody who got dunked. Oh, my friend moved to Georgia. to be a principal because it went sour up here. Phone call to that person. Hey, you mind if I talk to your friend? Sure. And it was like everybody knew someone else, and it happened so quickly. And Rebecca was basically working her side of the U.S. I was working our side in New York and in the Eastern area. And we just started collecting stories because people wanted to tell them. The people in this book represent people who stood up.
That's awesome.
They wanted to tell their story. We didn't pull their teeth. We didn't pay them $100 to fill out a survey. There was no incentive. They wanted to tell it. And that's about as raw as you can get. That's like carrot stick raw.
Wow. Yeah, I was going to say, like, how raw was this putting it together? I mean, was this just reading some of this stuff and again, I mean, I can't say this enough, but I mean, I read some chapters and my heart just sank because, not only am I going through it, but, I've also, I've seen other people get dumped. So how raw was this? Just the collection? Did it just...
I will say it is as raw as it gets because with every narrative, you relive it. You relive every emotion. You relive the smells, the sounds, you almost have like that flutter of anxiety kind of surface again. Just recently I was talking on the phone. I had an educational consultant call me and he's like, I got to tell you my story. So still everybody wants to tell their story, but it was the same thing. He goes, I have to tell you, he said, it broke my heart to read it because I relived those feelings again. But for the first time I felt validated and I emerged with hope and with a plan to overcome it next time.
See, and that's one of the coolest things about this book, I think, is I read it and like you said, I mean, the anxiety, the turning of the stomach, like I was reading some pages and I literally felt like I was walking back into the meeting where I was not just dunked, but slam dunked with whipped cream on top, and walking in and looking around and seeing every person that doesn't like you sit in that room and wait a minute, something's going on. Something isn't right here. And before you know it, man, boom, dunked. Yep. And then, just, and everybody's scenario is just a little bit different, but to know that there are so many people in every single state, in almost every single school district, someone has gone through this at some point or somebody knows someone. Right. That validation is so paramount, I think, for all of us in terms of moving forward. I mean, it certainly helped me.
Thank you.
I mean, this has been one of the best books that I've read in terms of, knowing that, hey, the light will be at the end of the tunnel. And sure, we don't know what that light is yet, and we don't know where it's going to be, but there's hope, and there are people that have lived this, and there are people telling you that you will get through this and you'll be okay.
Absolutely. It's really interesting because everybody still wants to share their story. And we feel very, very fortunate that we do have the avenue of the organization School Leaders Now. And so about every week or so, we are able to release a column. And it's basically people are still sending in their stories, and we're still kind of doing that Dear Abby style response of, just encouraging them with some wisdom and just some good, solid thinking about their situation and how to rise above it and how to work through it. But I love that even though the book is over, the conversation is continuing.
Yeah, and Jay, so School Leaders Now is the cousin of We Are Teachers. Which is a huge network of educators.
Right.
And, I just want to make two quick comments so I don't tie you up with your next question. But when we gather our stories, Rebecca and I made a decision. We're going to take the story, transcribe it, and it's published. Like, we don't change it. That's how raw it is. I mean, we take out, if there were any profane words, we take that out. We don't want it to be that type of book or that type of column, right? That's just, that's just people talking on their own, and they can do that whenever they want. But we take this stuff It's like out of mouth, on a paper, published.
Oof.
Because we owe that to the profession.
Yeah, absolutely we do.
So that goes back to that raw theme. And it's funny because there's a very interesting trend going on right now. Teachers, teacher aides, parents are buying this book.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying it to plug, for more royalties on it. They want to know, right? We're coming out with a series, a teacher dunk tank. We're coming out with a book for teens, the teenage dunk tank, how to make the right decisions when others around you aren't, right?
And how important is that today?
Huge. We want this to be a discourse, right? When people say the dunk tank, we want that to be part of people's discourse. Don't dunk me, right?
Right.
We want that to be part of our discourse in education, to acknowledge it, address it, and fix it, right? Fix these politics that it's like just a bad plague that's behind our school doors and nobody wants to talk about it. Well, we want them to talk about it.
No, and it's healthy. It's definitely a part of the dialogue piece is to get everybody, all the stakeholders involved in this process. So, we could hopefully avoid dunk tank scenarios, because not for nothing. I mean, while they're all personally and emotionally draining, the taxpayer is paying for it too,
right? Because
all this nonsense costs tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to set up the dunk tank, to dunk the person in the tank, and then chances are to, get the next person in. I mean, it's a vicious cycle that needs to be addressed. But with all that there's a lot of tense stories in here. But what are some of your favorite scenarios from the book? Some of the stuff that just you read it and you go, yeah. How about
well, I'm not gonna lie. Probably chapter 7's my favorite because it's the turning point in the book. Because really the first half of the book is heavy. It's dark, and you might even have to chunk out reading it and walk away till you do the next chapter because it stirs up those emotions. But by chapter 7, we're now switching into the positive of network. We have an action plan, so we're going to gather some allies. And there's one story in there in particular. The name that we used was Stan Sterling, but in all truth, it was a principle that I knew that really went above and beyond, just like you. It's like, you know what, if nobody else is going to do it, I'm going to step up and I'm going to show what a good leader looks like. And it was even changed by gender, but she, at the time, she really was looking to build a vanguard team, and she did whatever it took to find somebody's talent, even if she had to make up, kind of a job that didn't even exist. She would make it up just to test to see, are they going to be good at this? Let's check out their skills. And if they fall along the way, I'm their safety net. I'm going to rebuild them until we get them there. But it was that mindset of thriving and resilience and building leadership capacity. And it was so legit. And so that's probably my favorite because it's personal. And at that point, that's the turning point in the book, where now it's like, whew, we can breathe because, okay, there's hope, there's resilience, there's things that we can do to offset just that deep, dark, negative piece that kind of is heavy at the beginning of the book.
Yeah. No, I also agree. I'm a huge fan of chapter 7 because it shows everybody that again, like there's light at the end of the tunnel and we can move forward and everything will be okay. Mm-hmm. Dr. J?
Yeah, it really will. I'll take the other side of the book, just not because it's negative per se, because it really isn't. But what it does is it analyzes human behavior. Okay. And that's what we do. We analyze human behavior. And the human behavior is people act out of their emotions to then position someone in the tank. It could be for a revenge reason. It could be because you're holding someone accountable and they don't like accountability. And that leads to the dunk tank.
Yep.
It could be jealousy. It could be, there are so many different reasons that we go through, and we analyze the human behaviors and we share these people's stories so that we could do what? Prepare. have a proactive, we call it proactive paranoia. Okay, it's not a clinical term. You won't find it in a psychology book, but we coin it as proactive paranoia. And if you're aware that these things exist, these human behaviors that are the root to the driving forces as to why adversaries do what they do, you can better understand and better prepare for dodging the dunk tank. You just can, right? It's like a teacher's with itness. It's a form of mindfulness on a whole other self-reflective level that you are analyzing human behavior. Now, we're not saying you can change it. We're not saying that that person who wants revenge for you, sometimes you can't stop them, right? In the way our governance structure is set up, you may not have a chance in hell to stop them.
Right.
But if you analyze the reasons behind these driving forces, that's what the book at the beginning really uncovers. And we're proud that, you know, let me just say this. I just got off the phone a couple hours ago, friend of mine, new administrator in a new district. She hasn't been on the job for a week, and she's already got drama with some set of good old boys network that were hired by the previous superintendent. And because she's hired by the new one, she's an outcast.
Right.
She's automatically an outcast, and she didn't even do anything wrong.
Yeah.
She's positioned for failure, and she hasn't worked there 8 days.
Yeah, and that's one of those things. You know, you talk about it in the tank, but man, oh man, it's one of the things that you learn the hard way sometimes. I mean, I wish when I went to the district that I was in. I mean, everybody knows at this point it was between myself and an internal candidate. It was a very public campaign, and became public after I was hired, because that's when I found out that, you know, this person who was working in district was a finalist. And when I inquired about my 5 yes, 4 no decision to hire me, because I was rather alarmed, you know, that's when I found out that, oh, well, you know, there was this other person, and, you know, the old boys club wanted this person in. And when I heard that, I said, oh no. I said, here we go. I said, I'm going to say the sky is blue, and 5 people are going to say yes, and 4 people are going to say nope. Or where's the policy that said the sky is blue? Or where's, you know, we need an investigation to make sure the sky is blue. And I think a lot of people can relate to that scenario of, you know, you walk in, and before you know it, you're smacked upside the head with a bunch of problems that you have nothing to do with.
Yeah. And
that you're going to face a wall of resistance because you're not a part of the good old boys club. And again, that's everywhere. To
piggyback off of that, and then you are living your career day by day, knowing that there's another board election coming up in the springtime. And if your naysayers campaign a candidate who will get on the board to take the majority, you basically, you're done.
You're sunk.
You're done.
Right. It's the only job that you know, you actually live by that. Now, I don't know about New York, but New Jersey, they don't allow tenured superintendents anymore. One of the reasons. Correct. That was a reform a couple of years ago, but I could totally see the reason for a tenured superintendent at this point, because, like you said, your haters put together a campaign of people promising this and that, and they get elected, and then, you know, you're dead on arrival. Either you're handcuffed by policy and precedents, or you know, the rumor mill is just going to destroy you by these people that are on the board. Yeah. But I mean, if, you know, just for the record, though, I mean, if someone who doesn't like you is going to put together a group of candidates to run for the board, it would be cool for them anyway if they actually brought candidates that could vote on matters and actually make decisions. Because newsflash, if you if you elect people that are you know, relatives of school board members, they can't vote on personnel, including the superintendent. So, you know, effectively, some people just don't realize that. You know, it's so important that civics and people actually learn about what this is and how these school boards work in terms of hiring, firing, and setting precedents and policy. Because, like you said, you one wrong move and you got one group of people that don't care for you, and see ya. You're out.
And there are tons of school leaders, even teachers, before their tenure. There are a ton of educators who just want to play it safe.
Yep.
Play it safe, right? And what does that do for kids? It doesn't do anything.
Right. And that's one of the most disturbing things that I've come across as a superintendent. I worked with a principal. Oh, I'm just trying to stay neutral. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to rock any waves. This is the happy place. Blah, 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 blah. Well, then you're not doing anything.
Right.
Doesn't mean, it doesn't mean the fact that, you're not a good principal or you're not an effective educator. But if you're not willing to go out and make a risk, or if you're not willing to do what's best for kids because you're too worried about agitating this faction of people, well, that's a problem, and who does, and then the same old cycle of nonsense continues, and we're stuck at square one again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, the book is Escaping the School Leader's Dunk. This is where we're going to pause. The book is Escaping the School Leader's Dunk Tank, and I'm fortunate enough to have Rebecca Cota and Rick Jetter on. Guys, if there is some other... Actually, I'm going to rephrase my question right now. If you could give 3 copies of this book to anybody, whether it's, your former supervisors and you write a little love note in the beginning, or maybe it's to, friends or other colleagues, who would you give copies of this book to if you could?
Well, I have to start out by saying that we kind of already wrote the letter to our adversaries at the beginning of the book, so we're feeling pretty good with that.
Which I loved. I cannot tell you. I read that and I knew right away. I said, this is going to be one of my favorite books ever, because they basically, they just said hello in so many different ways and gave such a universal salute of awesomeness. I cannot even, I was like, yes, this is going to be good.
You kind of all did that already, but I'll let Rick take the rest of that away.
Footnote. Rebecca and I didn't write this book because we're scorned. Okay? We didn't decide to write this because we feel, we got the short end of the stick and we're going to pout about it and write a book so we can pout, right? That's not at all, right? In the projects that we're currently working on, including this one, we're doing this because we have to influence change somehow. And to answer your question, and it's going to sound a little weird, right? But it's got to be taken seriously from the top, and then it's got to spill. And what I mean by that is, we would love for the White House to have knowledge about the dunk tank. We would love to have the National PTA Association have knowledge about the dunk tanks, right? So we're talking more about entities versus a person. Okay. Right. We would love to have the School Boards Association to know about this. We would love, when we talked earlier, about ed leadership in universities and colleges to have this. We would love to have the principals associations to have this, and the teacher associations, because they're involved as well. They need to know what's happening with their principal, their assistant principal, and things are transferable to them as well. These issues apply to many educators. And parents have been picking up the book because they want to help. So it's more entity-based, Jay, if that makes any sense.
Oh, absolutely makes sense.
And that's the only way that we are going to have some influence on policy, protections for people. And we're not saying we want to protect the weak. I mean, there are terrible school leaders and terrible teachers out there. We know that. These books aren't protecting these people.
Right.
And we even say that in our book.
Right.
We're not protecting the weak.
Right.
But we're protecting those who can be deemed weak when they're not weak.
Right.
That's the difference. But we want entities to have this. And you can't do that by handing the book to one isolated person down at your elementary school at the end of the street. It's got to be brought in from a higher plane and then spill through. And that's what we hope to do with this. And the seriousness comes with people. I mean, we just had Chancellor Farina from the New York City Department of Education, right? We sent her a book. She wrote this letter. We posted it on Twitter and on our website. An amazing letter. Just an absolutely, right? She's on board. She joined the revolution. So we call it a dunk tank revolution. We want people to hop on and understand that we have control to either decrease these politics or eradicate them. And we're not going to do that unless more people are involved. So we wanted to go as high up and everywhere.
Yeah,
we're kind of like go big or go home. I mean, honestly, getting the book in the hands of any entity that is willing to be a megaphone for doing what is right, because that's really the theme of the book. Do what's right. Give it your best. Life's the most meaningful test. And I got dunked because good is bad and bad is good. So the second I did flex up to moral ethics was the moment I got dunked, because there was a threshold, there was a crossing point of, you know what, I can't stand by these unethical practices any longer. I can look the other way 10, 20 times, but when it goes to the next level and the next level, there was a point in which, you know what, just can't do it anymore. And so anybody that is willing to be in our court as a megaphone for excellence, resilience, and doing what is right, that's who we want to have our book.
And that's so awesome, because one of the coolest things about this is that you really do speak about a revolution, because it is. And having the opportunity to call me your unofficial ambassador, but I've been around the country quite a bit these past couple months, and talking to people and showing people how powerful this book actually is, and saying that, you know, the whole "it takes a village" mantra, it really is applied to this. I mean, this book applies to all stakeholders, as you said. You know, it belongs in the hands of parents to show them what's going on. It belongs in the hands of teachers, saying like, look at what's going on, or you know, don't open switch trick. You know, there's a lot more than smoke and mirrors than what you think, and it's reassuring to the administrator that has been through it, or you know, some of us that, again, I mean, if you've lived it. I got to go to a county roundtable last week, and you know, I spoke with 65 superintendents, 65 of my colleagues, and said, you know, I know I've been in the paper quite a bit, and I know I've been the spectacle of some people's attention as of late, but you all know better, and you all know what you're seeing, and you all know that I'm currently sitting in this dunk tank. And I showed everybody the whole book, and how, you know, by reading this book, people become more informed. And again, I can't speak enough of this book and how great it is, and how really every administrator should definitely have a copy of this. If I thought about this question that I just asked both of you, and I would actually, I wouldn't get 3 copies. I would get 9 for the 9 wise souls on the Board of Education in every town in New Jersey right now, because I really think that they need to see, you know, some districts have 9, some districts have 7, some have 5, some even have 13. But whatever the board count is, every single school board member should be reading this book.
You know, that's interesting, Jay, because there are some terrific board members out there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. They're saints, right?
Yeah.
And they may be sitting next to someone who is the exact opposite, and it probably drives them insane.
Absolutely.
Right? But the best, right? So the best part of this is, you know, you hand somebody the book, it's so nonviolent.
Right.
Right? And they might throw it in the trash can, you know, stick their middle finger up at you and say, you know, whatever. But it's such a nonviolent form of communication to hand someone this book and just say, hey, listen, I would really love for you to read this, because it's all about understanding each other when you walk in their shoes. and then that's it, walk away.
Yeah.
Or the opposite is to do formal training. Rebecca and I actually had an inquiry from a school district. They want us to come in and train their board.
That's awesome. That's, and in New Jersey, school board members have to go through X amount of classes, and one of them is ethics and, what's okay and what's not okay. And I'm actually going to be submitting this to a good friend of mine, Kim Harrington, who's the commissioner here in New Jersey. We've had some conversations about the book already, saying that, every school board member should be having a copy of this book, and they should really be reminded of their ethical responsibilities and obligations. They're not here being full-time pitchers at the dunk tank. Their job is to serve kids and work on philosophy, policy, and paychecks, not political spectacle and organizing mobs and creating a three-ring circus.
That's right.
So thanks for that. I guess at this point, what groups do you think? I mean, we've talked about school boards, we've talked about administrators, we've even talked about teachers. Where can groups go and learn additional information? Like, are certain stakeholders just targeted to certain areas? Are there Twitter chats? Are there downloads? Like, where can we get more Dunk Tank if we want more Dunk Tank?
Yeah, go ahead, Rebecca. We're up to our necks in water. We have so much stuff.
I was going to say, we have a lot going on. I know I had mentioned before, schoolleadersnow.com. People can submit their stories, and they'll get posted in the future with some type of positive advice or response. So that's a really good outlet for continuing the conversation, because I get phone calls on the drive home quite frequently, and I almost feel like a counselor a little bit, because I'm always hearing somebody's story, or emails or messages in the inbox. But I would say it's all about building allies and building your professional learning network. And so there are so many great Twitter chats out there right now. I know we're going to be hosting our hashtags SL Dunk Tank. And starting February 21st, we're going to be doing a book study with that. So just kind of be watching for that information to be coming across social media. But we're in tweet chats all the time. We've hosted a couple. We have two more that we're going to be hosting coming up. So just the first thing probably is to connect with us on Twitter, LinkedIn, or Facebook, because we do, really advertise anything that we're releasing. We have a great companion guide, a reflection guide for our trainings that if you sign up on our website, you will get that. And Dave Burgess did an amazing job just jumping in there with our reflection guide, and he backed us. He was behind that, and he wanted to make sure that we made it available for everybody and that we weren't charging for it, because he really believes in the dunk tank and healing and resilience and climbing out and doing that in a professional way through education and through a lot of reflection. I know there's more, Rick, so I'll let you kind of take it.
No, Jane, I just want to say one thing about the reflection guide. And, this resource is so cool because there are sections within it that carve out who you are. So if you're a teacher leader, there's a section for you. If you're a school board member, there's a section for you. If you are the professor of an educational leadership program, there is a section for you. Principal, section. AP, section. Superintendent, cabinet member, right? An assistant superintendent, a director. There are all these sections that help you to see where you fit in to the big piece of the puzzle and how your reflections can really help the whole system's way of thinking.
Awesome.
Yeah, our website is leadershipdunktank.com, and we've the traffic there has been insane. People are downloading this sucker like wildfire,
as they should. Again, this should be, if it's not reading on your desk, it should definitely be some reading by your nightstand, because again, it's so practical and realistic, and unfortunately, there's a whole lot of dunk tanks going on. So the more we could be prepared and the more we could understand, I know you said Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. What are your screen names so we could find you?
Yeah, I use Rick Jetter.
Okay.
And
Rebecca,
my own website is rickjetter.com.
Mine's pretty easy.
Yeah, we made it easy.
I use Rebecca Coda.
Beautiful. All right. We've talked a lot about Dunk Tank. The book is called Escaping the School Leader's Dunk Tank, How to Prevail When Others Want to See You Drown. The two fantastic authors, Rebecca Coda and Rick Jetter, thank you so much for being on. Last part of my interview at this point, we're going to have a little bit of fun, just some rapid fire. 7 questions that you have to answer in 5 or less words. Are you ready?
All right. Let's try it.
All right. So I'm going to start with Rebecca first. Favorite book besides the one that you wrote?
Right now, The 4 Agreements.
Okay. Rick?
Exploiting Children by Matt Spencer.
Rick, favorite color?
Green.
Rebecca, favorite color?
Blue.
What's your favorite food, Rebecca?
Anything Mexican.
Anything Mexican. All right. Dr. J, favorite food?
I skipped baby food and went right to buffalo chicken wings.
Nice. Well played. Rick, what do you do to relax?
I used to bang on the drums. That relieves a lot of tension. Now I'm just writing a ton, right? Writing is a form of mindfulness. I'm writing constantly.
Awesome. Rebecca? The way to relax.
Reading tabloids, This Is Us, all those girly things.
Nice. Well, I think, and again, in your book, you talk about relaxation and mindfulness, and that's so important. Being that this podcast is called The Hot Tub, I hope everyone can deduct from some simplistic thinking that I do enjoy my hot tub. It's a great place to relax. It's a great place to actually mellow out. It's not a source of paranoia. It's not anything inappropriate or unprofessional. It's a hot tub. You go in it to relax. Some people, they hear, oh my God, it's a hot tub. Oh, it's so bad. What's so bad about a hot tub, I don't understand, but so many people freak out when they hear hot tub sometimes. Maybe it's just like a South Jersey thing. They hear hot tub and they think it's like scenes from The Bachelor or something. It's a hot tub. You go in it to relax. I mean, what's so hard to understand about that? Rick, 4 words to describe you, sir.
Reflective, resilient. I am caring. I love kids, love teachers, educators, want to help everyone. Humbled. So humbled by my experiences, hitting rock bottom and then coming back up.
Awesome. Rebecca?
Probably my number 1 would be intense. I do everything like with full gusto. Compassionate, for sure. I would say the word advocate would describe me because I advocate for a lot. And hopeful, probably.
Wow. That's fantastic. Again, the book, Escaping the School Leader's Dunk Tank. I know we could find it on Amazon. We could find it on Barnes & Noble. I would think any classy bookstore at this point would have it. And you're probably going to see it in the hands of scads of superintendents and administrators and hopefully every school board member and teacher in the future because again, we don't like to talk about this stuff, but it's here and it's real. And I thank you again from the bottom of my heart and from someone who's been dunked, who's been slam dunked, and for someone who, like the Phoenix, rises once again. And again, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on for my debut podcast. And I look forward to connecting and seeing everything on your website and to see, hopefully, like the Pirate spinoff, hopefully we'll have a Dunk Tank spinoff for every single avenue of person in life because it's real.
That'd be awesome. Thanks, Jay.
We appreciate you having us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I'm rather impressed that you're actually still listening right now, because it was my first podcast and there sure are a lot of bumps and a lot of kinks to work out, but I thank you for listening. We said earlier that there's a Twitter takeaway and something that you need to check out or lurk. Just kind of spoke around. If you don't know what lurking is the term just to, check it out. You don't have to participate in any of these chats, but it's important that you read the information, because some of the best professional development out there is just sitting on Twitter at anybody's fingertips at any time in any place. So one of the chats that I actually encourage you to lurk and check out is called Soup Chat. It's hashtag SUPTCHAT, all one word. And if you type that in, you're going to come up with a connection of superintendents from around the country that are focused on making things for the better. We tackle problems, we see what's going on. It's kind of a way to get off the island of the superintendency. Again, worth it. And you don't have to be a superintendent to participate, but check it out. Hashtag Soup Chat. Chats are typically once a month, the first Wednesday of every month, starting at 7 o'clock Central Time. So that's it. Our first podcast in the books. Again, my name is Superintendent Jay Eitner, and I thank you so much for listening to our initial podcast. I have a lot to learn, and hopefully I'm going to learn with all of you. So again, if you need more information, check us out. We're at jayeitner.com. That's JAYEITNER.com. You could also follow me on Twitter at J_Eitner, EITNER. Thanks so much, and look forward to connecting with you soon.